let's get started. This is an updated presentation from one that I did, I think about 6 months ago or so. And the original title was Five Awesome Uses for ChatGPT. I really should have updated the title as well to 5 Awesome Uses for LLMs, because ChatGPT is not the only game in town. And there's some other choices for everyone to use. And they work, kind of sort of the same way, similar. So keep that in mind, that this isn't exclusively focused on ChatGPT. Although I'll have to say that probably ChatGPT is still the leader in a lot of ways in this whole genre of LLM tools. Introduce myself quickly. My name is Richard Rahn. I'm the principal president of Leonardo Group Americas. Written quite a few books on the subject of mixed model manufacturing, like mixed model line design, material flow, etc. And I actually did have a real job in my past. I spent some 16 years in manufacturing at a company called Storage Technology Corporation, and then later on a company called Ball Aerospace, where I was the material manager. And this is where I got my first lean training, was at Ball Aerospace. What else can I tell you about myself? Trained a lot of people. It's been 30 years. This is my 30-year anniversary of doing this kind of work. So, had a chance to meet a lot of folks over the years, and also, get into a lot of different factories and a lot of different industries over the years. I grew up in Mexico City. Luis, you'll be interested in knowing that. I'm a Chilango, sort of. So I grew up in Mexico City, but I went to college in the US and still here in Boulder, Colorado. Okay, so that's a quick introduction of myself. Now, for this webinar, here's our agenda. I'll give you an introduction to mixed model line design or mixed model manufacturing more generally, in case you're not familiar with that. And then we'll all take a survey just to get a sense of your experience and background with LLMs. Just out of curiosity, are some of you new to it, or some of you experts, or in between? Then I'm going to share with you the top 25 uses for LLM, specifically for mixed model manufacturing or lean manufacturing, let's say. Now, how did I come up with the 25 top uses? Well, I asked ChatGPT. That's a good way to do it, by the way, highly recommended. So what are the top 25 uses for you, ChatGPT, in this area, in this domain? And it came up with actually a pretty darn good list of 25 possible uses. I probably could have asked for 50, and it probably would have been able to deliver on that as well. So we could go on all day with the 25, but I picked out some of the top 5 that I've been using or doing, out of that list of 25. So we'll review those, and then I'll spend a couple minutes looking at where things are going in terms of, LLM maturity, and new developments, more recently than my original presentation. So keep in mind, we're just scratching the surface here in 2 ways. We're scratching the surface in terms of how ChatGPT or large language models can be used right now, because as you just saw, there are at least 25 and probably a whole lot more potential uses right now at its current state of maturity. But also we're just scratching the surface in terms of the maturity of large language models. And I'll share with you something that OpenAI came up with to scale or kind of classify levels of maturity for these large language models and where we are today. All right, so mixed model line design or mixed model manufacturing is our Leonardo Group Americas, my company's wheelhouse or specialty. And so what we're talking about here is basically lean manufacturing, but with a specific twist or focus that is focused on a situation or an environment with multiple product variants on a single assembly line or multiple assembly lines, but families of products going down the same line, and being able to do that without having changeovers, without stopping the line, changing over the materials the way things had been done often in the past, or significant delays, that you can just transition from one to another seamlessly with no delay. And it's a pretty important skill these days because, to be honest, most of manufacturing that takes place today is kind of in that description, where you have a family of products and maybe you have different sizes, different options, but you're not going to set up different assembly lines for each one. So you have to combine them, and you have to do that efficiently. And not only do you have to do the work efficiently so that workers aren't standing around because a hard product is coming down the line and everything else is drying up downstream because it's taking longer. And you have to be able to execute on material delivery because you're going to have a lot more variation in the parts that are consumed when you have a lot of different models going down the same line. So that all makes sense, right? So mixed model manufacturing really, for us, is mastering the skill of designing a mixed production line from a work content or workflow point of view, and mastering the ability to deliver materials in small quantities to the point of use, again, efficiently and without mistakes, without delays, with high quality. So that's our area of specialty. And although it may sound exotic, it's really not that exotic from the point of view that that's what most companies are dealing with, I would say, most manufacturing companies, although not all of them do it well. There is a process that you need to follow, and that's what we teach, and that's what we help companies do. All right, so that's what that is. So this whole webinar is going to be focused on kind of that domain, that area of specialty. Okay, next question to answer as background is, what is an LLM, or large language model? So here's a simple definition. AI, large language models. There's such a computer model, right, that utilizes deep learning techniques to generate text, human-like text. And now, more than text, images, the senses are expanding. But initially it was human-like text. And it's very good at being trained in all kinds of content and then being able to feed back responses to questions, prompts, in a very human-like or English-like or language, specific way, very conversational way, which is quite amazing. For those of you that have used it, it's sometimes quite amazing. How close it can seem to there's another human being on the other side responding and being able to carry on conversations, etc. So that's what we're discussing here. Now, there are other AI applications that are not specifically large language model. For example, there's a company that I'd recommend you check out called Retrocausal AI, and they have developed, their specialty is vision, like AI vision capabilities. And so they've developed some AI tools for manufacturing that rely on cameras, so not sensors. It's a sensor-less application of AI that can actually look at a workstation. Just as a simple example, they have a product called Kaizen Copilot that can look at a workstation and someone doing the work and really provide an in-depth analysis from the point of view of the work, like standard work definition, the tasks, the times, the placement of parts, the value-added versus non-value-added, the ergonomics of that station, all kinds of very important insights into the work that's being done at a workstation. They also have something called Assembly Copilot, which provides operators with heads-up kind of instructions on the work. So you train the AI in doing standard work, and then it will guide an operator through the steps and alert them if they get the steps out of sequence or they select the wrong part, etc. So this can be very useful where you have a situation where you have new people, right, or turnover, and you want to get people up to speed in terms of doing the work much more quickly. So they have an AI assistant looking over their shoulder and guiding them through the work steps. So this is not a large language model application per se, but I just wanted to alert you to the fact that LLMs is not all there is. I mean, there's a whole world of possibilities, and this is one that specifically is for manufacturing that we're interested in. Now, one word of caution in using LLMs is there's this concept called hallucinations. Right? Hallucination means that with total confidence, the LLM will give you an answer or respond to your question without expressing any doubt whatsoever, and it's wrong. It's not correct. I'll give you a simple example, which is kind of humorous. And I think the ChatGPT and those other LLMs are smarter now, but at least a few months ago, you could ask it a question like, "Okay, I've got 5 pieces of laundry, and I hang them out to dry, and it takes 5 hours to dry the 5 pieces of laundry. So how long would it take to dry 30 pieces of laundry?" Well, very confidently, the LLM is going to say, "Well, 5 hours, 5 pieces, that's 1 hour per piece. So it's going to take 30 hours to dry 30 pieces. Well, we know that's not correct because that drying is taking place in parallel. It's not sequential drying. So that's the kind of hallucination or mistake that still exists. So I guess what I'm saying here is that we can't rely, at least today, even today, after a lot of advances are happening and a lot of improvements, we can't rely on what you're going to be getting back from an LLM 100%. In other words, it's very helpful that you're a subject matter expert and you're treating LLM as a very smart and very knowledgeable, but not entirely reliable partner, right, in what you're trying to do. So you have to vet what's happening. Okay, so let's do a quick poll here. I'm going to turn on the polls, start the poll, and publish it. Just a simple question. Have you used ChatGPT or any other LLM? Like there's one called Claude AI. There's Bing. They're embedding it in browsers now, in Edge. There's all kinds of stuff, all kinds of options. Google's coming out with their version, and Microsoft has their version, etc. So let's see how much maturity we have here. I'll give this a minute. The numbers are still bouncing around a little bit. Okay, so it looks like maybe close to two. Well, about half of you have fooled around with it. I assume that means you've tried it, you've used it, and kicked the tires a little bit. About a quarter of you have used it extensively. So personally, I use ChatGPT or Claude. Those are my 2 main ones. I use it every day, not for work necessarily. I just I use it instead of Google for the most part. When I'm looking for information, I typically, my default go-to tool is ChatGPT today, because I find I'm getting more precise, more clear English-like answers, whereas Google tends to be, giving you a lot of links that you have to then go to a secondary step of researching and trying to find the information you want. And then in this poll, 17% of you haven't looked at it yet, so you're in for a treat, because it's quite surprising, shocking somewhat, how human-like the conversation can be, with these tools. And it's only getting better over time. So just to recap, the use of LLMs in general, the way I'm using it, the way I recommend you use it, at least right now, is not to rely on it too much as a source of truth per se, but add it to the team. As I said before, it's kind of like having a really smart new graduate, right, who maybe doesn't know everything, but has a lot of book learning, and it can be a very valuable member of your team, but not the decision maker necessarily. So that's how we're using it. Now that could change in the future as our level of confidence in the kind of answers we're getting grows. I don't see why it wouldn't grow. Then maybe our level of trust is going to be higher. I'm not saying I distrust it. Most of the answers I get from LLMs are really good, but you have to have that note of caution, let's say. Okay, so let's get into it here, and I'll just do a quick read through, basically, of the top 25 uses for LLM. That stands for Large Language Models, and MMM, which is Mixed Model Manufacturing, as we've discussed previously. So I hope I've brought you all up kind of up to speed in terms of what those terms mean. All right, so first one, identifying process inefficiencies. Can analyze existing processes and identify areas of waste or inefficiency. In other words, if you can feed the information to in the form of a prompt to an LLM like ChatGPT, for example, a list of tasks and times, it can actually go through and provide you with some useful feedback in terms of which of those tasks are potentially non-value adding, versus value adding tasks. It can look at potential quality risks. It can do all kinds of quite surprising things. Right now, the kind of format in which you need to provide information in the past was text only. But now the LLMs, including ChatGPT and Claude, can actually read Excel. So if you had an Excel worksheet, it can actually read that directly. And I believe with ChatGPT, it'll actually write Excel files directly, which is pretty cool. So that can be useful as an aid, right? Analyzing process data. Root cause analysis, same kind of thing. You can describe a scenario, again with text, describe a scenario, and you will be amazed at how LLMs can come back with potential causes, kind of like a FMEA analysis of the information that you provide. Here are all the potential root causes or causes of an issue. Like we're having this issue A here, tell me what could be the causes for that problem, and it'll give you a quite in-depth analysis, which is great. Process mapping, so value stream mapping, for example. One thing that LLMs are not that good at least I haven't had any success really with it, is producing a flow chart that looks, kind of like how we normally want it to look. It tends to be overly artistic, at least the ones I've tried. However, it can, if you provide it with the input, create a value stream map, for example, in a format that a tool like Visio or Excel can use. In other words, a macro. It can generate a macro that when you run it in Visio or in Excel, it'll create a value stream map. So that could speed up things a little bit. I've also fed LLMs an existing value stream map image, like a bitmapped image, basically, of a value stream map. And I was surprised with how accurately it was able to come back and analyze it and tell me, this is a value stream map. It's this kind of industry. Here are the processes. Here are the times. Here are the accumulation of inventory points. The yellow triangles. Very, very accurately. So, there are all kinds of opportunities available there. Standard work development. So again, this is kind of what Retrocausal, the company I mentioned earlier, is involved in as well. But at least if you provide it with some basic input data, you can format it, organize it, and feedback, very structured SOP, standard operating procedure. Again, lots of good uses there. Kaizen event planning. Again, it knows it's read every book. ChatGPT has read every book on lean. So if you ask it for help in terms of organizing and planning a Kaizen event, you can feed it information about the opportunity. What is the challenge? What are we trying to do in this Kaizen event? It can come back with quite a detailed, almost hour by hour plan of executing that Kaizen event. Okay, what else? So we got 25 of these, right? I better speed things up. So training material creation, creating manuals or guides. As long as you provide the basic information that it needs, it can do a great job of supplementing it, adding additional content, feeding back to you really well-written instructions or documents on any topic you wish. So ChatGPT and Claude, all these LLMs are really excellent writers. So even if you take an existing document and feed it up there and say, please review, improve the writing, it's going to come back with something that is probably better, right, than what you gave it. Now, if you're a student, you're not supposed to do this, right, for your course material. But if the goal is to have a well-written document, who cares how it was created, right? You just want it to be accurate and you want it to be clear and well-written. So this can be tremendously helpful. Performance metric tracking. Again, the question is getting the data to it, but it can do, it's really good actually at looking at trends, looking at data, and providing feedback on that, to track performance, process performance. Right, number 8, data analysis and visualization. Well, this is kind of similar. Again, if you can provide that data in the form of an Excel spreadsheet or in the form of a text file, then it can do all kinds of things in terms of whatever you ask it to do in reality. Identify trends, historical data, variation. It'll provide lots of good information there. Same thing really with benchmarking, provide information on best practices. It can draw on what it knows and provide feedback on, in this particular industry, what are the best practices, how can you improve the process, etc. Now, idea generation, again, it's very good at brainstorming. So if you provide a scenario of some kind and say, give me some ideas on how to tackle this particular issue, or ways to improve the process, or ways to approach this issue, it typically is quite amazingly good at coming up with ideas. Now, could you come up with some of those ideas yourself? I would hope so, right? That's kind of your job for most of us. But the value here is that, number one, it's going to be a lot faster if you ask ChatGPT to do it, as long as you have the expertise to vet that list, right, and know which is good and which is bad. But also, what I found is that oftentimes the ideas will include things that I agree with, but I hadn't thought of them. And so because the large language model is drawing on a big pool of training data, it can come up with things that oftentimes are new, right, or unique. It may seem to be innovative, even though probably it's just drawing on information that it was trained in. So it's not truly innovative, but it's innovative from my point of view because I hadn't thought of it myself. So that can happen as well. All right, what else? Risk assessment. I'm going to go a little bit faster if you don't mind. By the way, I'm going to, at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link to download this whole presentation so you can go through this list yourself. So risk assessment, that's like an FMEA type analysis. That can be a very powerful tool to speed up the development of a what is it called? Failure mode and effect analysis. Okay, change management, knowledge management, value stream mapping. I touched on that already. 5S implementations. It knows everything about 5S implementations, so it can be helpful there. Just-in-time and Kanban, so switching to materials. Provide all kinds of recommendations on your internal Kanban system and also external, supply chain strategies. TPM, again, another thing. It can give you a TPM plan. If you provide it the right information, it'll give you a detailed, TPM plan for a particular machine even. Supplier relationship, simulation and modeling. This is one of the things I want to talk about in this webinar. Project management. It's not so strong in planning, but certainly if you provide it the right information, it can organize that really well. Some other uses, writing Excel macros. I've done this a lot, so I'm going to touch on this. Skills assessments. So if you provide the raw data, it can provide you with a really good analysis, skills breakdown by person, by skill type, et cetera, where your weaknesses are, where you need to focus your training, et cetera. Writing code is a big use for LLMs. So writing code in our case for tools, right, that you might want to use, lean software tools. I'm not talking about macros here. I'm talking about writing like Python code, writing programs to do specific things. And then it'll create lean training courses. I've done this actually quite a bit. Again, you need to know your subject. You can't expect LLMs to create a whole course for you, but if you know your subject, it can be tremendously helpful in terms of generating really detailed outlines, generating scripts or instructor notes on various topics is quite amazing. And then finally, integrating lean principles into software development. So agile kind of strategies, very good at that as well. So I hope I didn't overwhelm you there. But as I said, I could have asked for 50 instead of 25, and I probably would have gotten a pretty good list. All right, so what are we going to talk about here in more depth? So these are things that I've actually done. So I didn't want to share with you, things that were kind of theoretical, vaporware that I sound good, but I've never actually kicked the tires or actually done that. So let's look at these 5. So we have learning and research, writing, coding, modeling, like computer simulation modeling creation, and then the whole issue of Kaizen, some various aspects of Kaizen. All right. So let me take a deep breath. Whew. Let me take a sip of Starbucks, and let's get going. Use number 1, learning and research. So the issue here, I don't know if you can see this. Print's probably a little small on your screen, but the issue here is when you're doing research on a topic, and that could be a mixed model manufacturing topic, or it could be, how do I do this? How do I change the spark plugs on my writing more, or whatever it is. As I mentioned earlier, my default is I go to an LLM rather than to Google, because the difference is what you see here. On the left side, I asked the question, what is an Obeya room? I was interested in that. What's an Obeya room? And I get an answer, right? I get an actual concise answer. And I could have said, what is an Obeya room? Give me a 10-page report. It probably would have created that as well. But if you just want something succinct, you can actually specify, give me a paragraph, or give me a page, or give me 500 words. So there's a definition. Now, if I did the same query in Google, what I get is page after page after page of links. And I don't know if these links are good or bad. Probably the better ones, based on Google's algorithms, are on the first page, right, or at the top of the page. But I then have to click on each one of these. So I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, right? You have to kind of search through and find the content you're looking for. So that's why, unless I'm looking for something very specific, where I'll go to Google, if I'm interested more in the, a kind of a text-based, language-based response, I'll go to large language models like ChatGPT is a typical one. So for those of you that have never used LLMs, once you get used to it, how to get in there and submit your queries, your questions, I think you'll find it an improvement. The other thing you can do in terms of learning is you can use ChatGPT or Claude to be like a professor, a teacher. For example, you can create a query to ask ChatGPT to create an exam for you to test your knowledge on a particular subject. So here's just a simple example. Pick a topic, right? And you could tell the LLM or ChatGPT, give me 10 questions on this topic to test my knowledge, and I want half of them to be short answer questions and half of them to be multiple choice. And give me the questions one at a time. And then after I answer each question, give me the feedback, especially if I got it wrong. So it'll do that very happily. And usually those questions are pretty darn good on that, whatever that subject is. And then you answer, and then down at the bottom here, you'll see correct. The process of converting data into a format that can be easily analyzed, blah, 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 is known as data transformation. So this can be used to, if you're in the business of creating training content, this is a good way, or I would say a great way, to generate quizzes and exams by getting the help of ChatGPT, because it'll generate these in seconds. You can try to come up with it on your own, feel free, but you can get this done a whole lot faster. All right. Next thing is a hallucination example. So again, I want to reiterate that at least at this level of maturity, which on a scale of 1 to 5, we're probably at level 1 in terms of LLMs, but you have to treat everything with a grain of salt. So if you ask it to create a quiz, you need to be competent enough to review those quiz questions and know if they're correct or not. If you don't, then you could run into issues. Now, here's something. Again, these tools keep getting better, but this is something I actually did. I said to ChatGPT in particular, I said, give me 10 links on the best articles on Hoshin Kanri. So a lean subject. And it said, sure, here are the 10 links to some of the best articles on Hoshin Kanri. And it gave me the links. But when I clicked on those links, they were all bogus, every one of them. was not a valid link. Like the first one, I know Mark Graban. Mark Graban has written a great book on lean for hospitals. And as far as I know, I could be wrong, he's not specializing in it and has not written articles or books on Hoshin Kanri. But it gave me this link here, lean.org, lean posting. When you click on it, you get either one of those 4.4 errors, that page doesn't exist. I don't know if I ever got actual articles, but it was like nothing like what it was giving me here. So kind of scary. So those kind of very specific things, you've got to really watch out for. All right, next thing, writing. So we do a fair amount of writing. So what kind of writing do we do? Well, we write books for one thing. We're not relying on ChatGPT to write our books, but we can use it as a research tool, and we can use it as a kind of validation tool or to generate ideas or brainstorming. Extremely valuable that way. But we also write trip reports. We also write assessments. Companies ask us to come in and take a look at what they're doing and provide some feedback. And so LLMs can be very useful in terms of improving that deliverable and also speeding it up, getting it done faster. So let's take a look at some writing tools. Now, here is a big one, and this is completely new, hot off the press. OpenAI is the parent company of ChatGPT. And 2 days ago, so again, hot off the press, so that you're hearing this, very soon after it was announced by OpenAI. What they say here is great news. Fine tuning is now available for GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.0 mini to developers on all paid usage tiers to help you get higher performance at a lower cost for specific use cases. Fine tuning enables you to, here's the important point, customize a model's responses to fit your preferred structure or tone, or adapt it to follow, super important point, domain-specific instructions. So to put it in plain English, you can train your own, if I understand this right. And by the way, this was quite a long email and a click to user documents and stuff. So I'm just giving you like the introductory couple paragraphs. But if I understand this right, you can train your own large language model basically in your company's processes, your company's procedures, your company's information. Now, I wouldn't put any proprietary information into there necessarily, but if you have general work instructions that are specific to your company, it sounds like, and there were ways of doing this previous to this announcement, but create your own custom, chatbot basically with your own information. So that's pretty exciting stuff. We'll see where this goes. But what that means is we could have, for example, in our case, a mixed model manufacturing expert, and we continue to train it, improve it in our own methodologies, and then be able to, from it, generate documents, training, courses, even books, testing people's knowledge, work instructions, all based on our methodology, right? Our particular approach. So that's pretty exciting. Again, there were ways of doing that previous to this announcement, but it sounds like this is better. Because I think what you had to do before was actually incorporate all those instructions as part of a script. And this sounds like it's actually kind of like more realistic training that stays with the model, but it's specific to you, right? To your particular model. So in terms of, other uses, along this line, you could set up your own private chatbot. Again, this is new from OpenAI. I just discussed this with you. You can train it in your own content, and then you could have ChatGPT generate detailed work instructions based on detailed prompts. So this is an example of how you maybe used to do it before. There are a lot of third-party people trying to help with this, providing products, but unfortunately, I think OpenAI has kind of made them obsolete. But build your own your own ChatGPT, so to speak, with your own information and be able to do whatever you want with it, including standard work definitions, which could be pretty cool. Or using your own private ChatGPT, so to speak, write a comprehensive and detailed outline for a course. In this example, I said, on the subject of Hoshin Kanri, organize into logical sections. Under each section, suggest subtopics. So this was a whole long response from ChatGPT, but it said, course title, Hoshin Kanri, strategic planning, introduction, origins, overview, key principles, benefits. That's lesson 1. Lesson 2, planning framework, vision and mission formulation. So I think it was like a 12-lesson course. And if this is your own information, then it's that much more valuable, right? Rather than just drawing on what it was trained in a more generic way. Now, there are some other tools. There are a lot of third-party tools that are intended to make it easier to do various things using these large language models. Unfortunately, I suspect a lot of them are going to be made obsolete over time. You know, when those capabilities are kind of integrated into the core model, so in the future you won't need a lot of these add-ons. But one of the add-ons that we played with that I like is called Jasper. So Jasper, think of Jasper as a combination of AI and Word. Now, the way this is going to be obsolete is Word now has Copilot, so Jasper may be in trouble. I'm not sure. But the original intent was you can write yourself, and then where you need either research help or you want some sample content, you can just place your cursor in the document and click on, I think it was like, there's a keystroke combination, like, you know, Control S or something like that. And it will do a search and provide that kind of content that you were asking for. So this would be a hybrid way of generating reports, documents, et cetera, and making it easy. Instead of going back and forth, you could always open Word, right? And then open ChatGPT and go back and forth and back and forth. But this is all on the same screen, all integrated, you know, to create documents. So they're literally, I'm not, as President Biden would say, I'm not kidding around. I'm not making this up. This is a real thing. This is the real deal. There are 10,000 or more add-ons available for large language models. Of course, a lot of them do basically the same thing, so it's not like 10,000 unique uses for it. But anything you can think of probably already exists, either in the large language model like ChatGPT, or someone else has developed some kind of app for it. It's really unbelievable. In fact, there's even a website called there'sanaIforthat.com. all one string, right? There's an AIforthat.com that lists, probably 11,000 right now, different add-ons. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? I mean, my mind gets blown every day with this stuff. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Large language models for mixed model manufacturing, coding, and macros. I've used this a lot. And the reason why this is really important at this stage of maturity of LLMs is if you're dealing with data, you can't really trust ChatGPT or Claude or these large language models to give you good numbers, right? Calculations back, I found. In terms of not trusting it, I would not trust LLMs very far when it comes to data processing. However, they're very good at writing code and specifically macros. So if you have some Excel spreadsheets that you've used in the past, or you can imagine using an Excel spreadsheet with some macros, some VBA code attached to it to speed things up and automate the use of an Excel spreadsheet, that's the route I would go down. Because that way you're getting a macro, you can look at the code or have someone look at the code for you if you can't really look at it and validate that it's doing these calculations correctly. For example, a simple example, there's a takt time calculation formula, right, in Lean. So you've got effective work minutes divided by volume or your demand. So it's minutes per unit is takt time. I would not rely on ChatGPT to calculate takt time for you. I would have it generate a macro that uses your data in an Excel spreadsheet and does it for you. I mean, it's a very simple calculation. You can just add the formula yourself. But as an example, any kind of data processing, I would not rely on ChatGPT or these other tools. So, for example, one of the things we use is a lean. I'll give you an example of a macro here. We use something called the Lean Design Simulator. So this is a discrete event simulation modeling tool that we contracted with a software developer to create for us to build simulation models of value streams, principally, right? So, or line designs. So it's not going to model everything in the world, but it's really designed for value stream map modeling. And the reason for that, as an aside, is that in a mixed model environment, there are a lot of sources of variation. And so when something changes, it's very difficult, even as a professional, knowledgeable veteran of lean manufacturing, to know how that system is going to respond because there are too many moving parts. So building a simulation model is a great way, highly recommended we do this, to test your design, your workflow, because you want to test it in a variety of scenarios with changes to mix and volume to make sure that it's going to perform even when things change, which they will, right? Which they will. So you don't want to have a really great design that chokes and dies as soon as some of the product mix changes. So computer modeling is a great way to test that prior to physically implementing. The worst time, by the way, another second aside, the very worst time to improve a process is when you've already implemented it, right? Because that's going to be the most disruptive, the most expensive. So that'd be like designing an airplane and then you're going to test it by building the real plane, right? No, you're going to build a wind tunnel and test a model of that plane in a wind tunnel before you actually build the real thing. Same issue, exactly. So we have a simulator that uses Excel as the data inputs, right? You build the model in Excel, and as long as you know kind of what goes in each column, it's pretty straightforward, and then you execute the model in a kind of a black box. So what I did here is you can always make even if you know how to do it, you can always enter a typo or something like that. So we want to check the validity of our model. And so what I did was I had ChatGPT create a series of macros. That's another recommendation. If you get into this, break it down into small pieces. Don't try to get a massive macro that does everything because it'll be very hard to test it and debug it. So here's an example of what I did. This is the prompt I fed to ChatGPT. I said, write a VBA code for Excel macro that will verify that tabs in the active workbook exist named flow desk and resources. So we have two different worksheets here, flow description and resources. And if those worksheets are not there, that's a showstopper, right? So display an error message, hey, those worksheets aren't here, and exit the macro. The next thing I said was, okay, find the one that's named resources, and starting in the second row and continuing to the end of the data that's in that sheet, verify that the cell value in row 3 is either, that should be column 3. Did I say that? Anyway, is either P, S, or O. If not, change the background color of that cell to light red. So this is a validation check. Now, there's a lot of stuff to check for. This is just one thing, but it'll generate the code kind of like this. Next example, it'll generate the code, and there's a little button that says copy code right here. So you just copy the code, paste it into Excel, and you're done. So this is, even if you know VBA, well, first of all, if you don't know VBA, it's going to write the code for you. It's going to be hard for you to debug it yourself manually, but you can go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, this doesn't work. I'm getting this error message. Please fix it. So even if you know very little about VBA, you can still use it. But even if you know VBA, ChatGPT is going to write the code like 10 times or 100 times faster than you can do it by hand. So why not take advantage of that? So it does an actually really, really good job. In fact, I've used ChatGPT to create a one-click. I have a whole separate webinar on this that you can find on YouTube. But create a whole model, a whole simulation model based on one page of input. And I did it all with VBA macros using ChatGPT successfully. All right, so here's the input sheet. Look at that sheet and generate the model. Click and boom, like in 2 seconds, it creates all the different worksheets and the data, and it's all formatted correctly, et cetera. It took me a long time. I mean, it took me a day or two of work, but if I had to do that myself by hand, I would have never gotten it done. Even I know enough to be dangerous with VBA, but I would have been having to go back and forth. How do I do this? How do I do this? And ChatGPT was able to really speed it up tremendously and successfully. Okay, next thing, simulation modeling. I've already touched on this, but this is a little different issue because LLMs will not only generate macros, which are a form of code, but it'll generate other kinds of code. In fact, any programming language probably you could think of. But a very common one is Python. So this is something I've had success with. I unfortunately don't have enough Python experience to be able to take this like to the next step. Maybe some of you watching this do, but basically you can describe what you want it to do, and it's going to generate the Python code. And then you can run it, debug it, ask ChatGPT or Claude or any of these LLMs to improve it. In fact, there are LLM models that are specifically designed to write code, but ChatGPT does a pretty good job. So use in these instructions, I said use Python and use this simulation library called SymPy. I wasn't sure if ChatGPT knew about SymPy, like an add-on library with all the simulation modeling, macros and code. And it said, "Oh yes, I know SymPy. I know it very well. What do you want me to do?" Da da da. So it knew all about it. So somehow. So I just described how this is sometimes called pseudocode. So you're writing code in plain English, how you want it to work, and then you feed that back to ChatGPT, and it generates the code. So pretty cool. So what you see here were some instructions on how I wanted it to work, and that code was able to run. Worked, right, as I instructed it. Now, it doesn't always work first time out. So you often have to adjust your script or make some corrections. And if you have a complex kind of application, you really want to break it down, into modules or pieces. That's probably a programming recommendation generally. So Python code, lessons learned from my experimentation with Python. So yes, it will generate the code. The difference is in the quality and the detail of your instructions, right, or your prompt. So the more specific you can be in terms of what you want it to do, the better, right? You have to be quite specific. So this is the pseudocode that I mentioned. You're describing very precisely what you want it to do. Also, clearly, it's going to be helpful or even necessary to be familiar with the language that you're using or with programming in general. Right? If you're completely new to programming, you're going to be probably lost right out of the gate. But if you're familiar with Python or familiar with the language you want it to use, then this can really speed things up. And ChatGPT or LLMs can fix their own errors if you point it out. There's an error message here. It'll come back and sometimes say, "Oh, I'm sorry." It'll literally say, "I'm sorry. I was using an earlier version of Python or something, come up with some excuse, but fix the problem." So it's quite amazing, the possibilities. So what I see with simulation modeling is, and I've discussed this in my previous webinar, in another webinar, is if you guys are familiar with simulation modeling, almost every software package, not just ours, but commercial software like ProModel, FlexSim, Simulate, Arena, all the the commercially available simulation packages have the ability to receive outside input. And so what I can see is like huge time saver is you have ChatGPT or LLM build the input file for your simulation modeling engine. Now, in our case, with our own simulation model, we know what the inputs are. It's in Excel, et cetera. But when I did some research, not almost every commercial simulation package that I saw would receive input from the outside. So that can be a game changer in terms of the ease with which you can build simulation models. And we're big fans of simulation modeling. So there we go. All right, final thing. We got a few minutes left here, so I think we're okay on time. We'll get it done within an hour. Some other kind of uses related to saying process improvement or root cause analysis. So this is an actual script that I wrote with a root cause analysis example. Again, you may have trouble reading this on your screen, but basically this is what I typed in to ChatGPT. I said, a manufacturing company is experiencing increase in defective products on one of its assembly lines. We've noticed an increase in defective products on assembly line A. The defect rate has risen from 2% to 8% in the past month. The primary defect is misaligned components. Can you help us conduct a root cause analysis to identify and address the issue? So clearly, the more specific you can be here, the better. This is kind of a generic example. But ChatGPT said, sure. It's typically very friendly. Right? Sure, let's begin by gathering some additional information. So it's telling me, well, that's interesting, but you haven't given me enough to work with. So let me ask a few more questions. So it's smart enough to do that. So it said, have there been any recent changes to the assembly line, such as new equipment, personnel, or suppliers? Well, that's a good question. Are there any patterns in the defective products, such as specific times of day or shifts when defects are more frequent? Have any maintenance or calibration procedures been skipped or delayed recently? So those are all good questions, right, that ChatGPT came up with. So again, you can go back and you can research those questions, answer them. User, we've introduced a new supplier for one of the components. The defects seem to occur more frequently during the night shift. So you can go on, right? And ChatGPT will continue to prompt and probe for more information. And it's like interfacing with a pretty knowledgeable, lean specialist who knows enough to ask kind of like the right questions and then provide some really good recommendations typically. So this is just a continuation of that discussion. Thank you for providing that information. And then it comes back with, let's look at component quality. Let's look at night shift personnel. So again, pretty amazing, I think. I mean, this is kind of mind-blowing that it'll go through a conversation and lead you down the road to a really, getting to the root cause, getting to the bottom of things. Next thing, which is very powerful, many of you are familiar with this. If you're not, then you need to learn about it. It's called FMEA, Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. So again, similar to what we just looked at, ChatGPT can help go through a failure mode and effects analysis. Basically, the idea here is you try to identify all of the potential failure modes, things that can go wrong, in other words. And then when those things go wrong, what is the effect? So the effect could be a range from it goes wrong, but no one notices, to maybe on the other side of the scale, someone dies. That's a range. So you can really make excellent use of ChatGPT or large language models to help you go through the analysis. And the importance of FMEA is not just to develop a checklist, but to also create a priority list, right? Which of the failure modes are more important to focus on first? Because you can't do everything at once, right? But which ones are going to have the most serious effects? So there's detectability, there's the severity of the impact, and there's a frequency of occurrence. All those things generate a score, and based on those scores, you would sort your list. And ChatGPT can do all of that, right? Can help you with that. So again, it could be extremely powerful there. Highly recommended. Now, we're getting close to the end here, a few minutes. In a lot of companies, or maybe this could be you, right? If you're so inclined, there's a potentially new position, new job description coming on the horizon. That's called a prompt engineer. So a prompt engineer would be someone who's experienced enough with using these large language models to be able to frame the kind of questions and queries properly to get back the information that we want in the right format and the level of detail and the right accuracy. So there's a skill to that, and you can get trained in how to become a prompt engineer, but it makes a huge, huge difference in terms of the results you get from using these large language models. Now, another option in terms of good scripts, good prompts, is to ask ChatGPT or LLM to help you improve the quality of your prompts. It will do that as well. It'll say, well, your prompt is okay, but you need to provide this additional information in your prompt, and you explain it to me. And there are some online courses on how to become a prompt engineer. This could become important in the future. So I want to point that out to you. Okay, so what's coming up here? We're wrapping up here. Coming up soon, let's say, or coming up at some point in the future. OpenAI, the company, right, the parent company of ChatGPT, came up with this 5-level maturity scale. And the first level, which is kind of where we are now, is chatbots. So right now we have large language models with a conversational language doing amazing things, really. But that's still just level 1. Okay, that's where we are. Now, there's been some brouhaha. I kind of follow what's happening in the AI world in a couple ways. I subscribe to some email newsletters, and they come like daily. It's crazy. And there's some good YouTube channels of people that spend the time to research, what's going on. There's too much to research on your own. I mean, it's like every day there's something. So the point here is that there's some brouhaha out in the AI world that OpenAI is actually approaching level 2, and that some of their employees are getting nervous about this. In fact, they've had some people quit. They were concerned that the controls, the security was not, strong enough because these new models were that much more powerful. So level 2 is reasoner. So not just drawing on information that it was trained in and being able to repackage it and reformat it and carry on some conversations. It's actually being able to plan, right? To think ahead and come up with new solutions that were not part of the training necessarily, or repackaged in very unique and new ways. So basically a human level problem solving capability. That's level 2. And people are saying level 2 is going to happen 2024, that's this year, or 2025, next year. These large language models are going to reach that level. And when we say human level, we don't mean IQ of 100. We mean PhD level reasoning, which is going to be something of a game changer as well. That much better, responses from these. But the level 1 and level 2 are basically, information on a screen kind of interface. Although the new models, even ChatGPT, can actually write files. So you can download files and upload files. So there is that kind of back and forth. It's not just what's on your monitor. Now, level 3 is agents. That means systems that can take actions in the physical world. So ChatGPT, I want to take a trip to Kauai, in the Hawaiian Islands around these time frames. So please go ahead and book my, flight and book my hotel. And before you pull the trigger, let me know what the budget is, et cetera, and it can go out and do those things for you, not just provide the information, but book the reservations. Simple example. So anything that can be done basically on a computer screen or a keyboard, shopping on Amazon, instead of providing information on this product, it can go to Amazon and buy the product for you, right, and have it delivered. So that's kind of what we mean by agents. So with agents, we're not necessarily talking about robots, although that's a whole nother area that's happening very quickly. Actual robots, which again is crazy. The number of companies that are developing humanoid kind of robots is off the charts. It's unbelievable. All right, so agents is level 3. Again, that's not in the far future. That's starting to happen already. And then we have innovators, so a higher level degree of invention. So creating new things. That could be new products, new chemicals, new medical, treatments, drugs. That's going to be a real breakthrough level when we get AI working on those kind of things. And again, we're not starting from zero. The AI is already working on things like there's something Fold. I can't remember the name. It is able to analyze various proteins, and it's been already very useful in terms of identifying potential drugs or treatments or products, even being able to create, proteins. And then the final one, level 5, again, this is OpenAI's level of definition. The final one is AI can do the work of an organization, can run the company, can run your supply chain, contact suppliers, place orders, do all your bookkeeping and accounting, design products, run the factory, run the assembly lines, design the assembly lines. So that's a little farther away. I would say that's going to be really transformative, or we could even say disruptive. But again, there's nothing that's going to stop that from happening unless we stop developing AI. Unless as a human race we decide stop improving AIs. And I don't think that's going to happen. Then this level 5 is in our future. Probably, I have no knowledge to guess when. But the way things are improving is quite amazing. For example, here's the maturity curve. So where are we now? Well, we're at level 1, right, out of 5. So we're probably down at the lower level here under promising somewhere. But once it starts improving itself, then that curve is going to go up much more quickly, maybe even straight line, straight off. And again, I would say over the next few years. So you still need to be a subject matter expert. So let me just remind you that part of what you need to know as a lean professional is material flow, so mixed model material flow. And we're teaching this workshop at Toyota Material Handling. So check this out with this link, leandesignstudio.com, mixed model material flow. It's in November. It's at the Toyota fork truck factory in Columbus, Indiana, 3 days. This is a picture from the last one just a few weeks ago. So life-changing experience, and as a lean professional, it's something you do need to know. It's actually almost full, this class. I think we have 6 or 7 seats left in the class only. So if this is something of interest to you, hope you can check it out and join us there. I'm going to activate a PDF file. So if you want to download this presentation, you should be able to do it now. 5 awesome uses for LLMs. And look forward to, if you have any questions or other comments, you can post them here in the chat. I'll stay on for a few minutes. I know we're over by about 5 minutes, but I'll stay here and respond to any specific questions or comments you have. Other than that, you can email me at ron@leonardogroupamericas.com.